She married him to bear his heir. He gave her his hand, but at that moment she was shocked and thought he had rejected her. She remembered her assistant's words that her rejection meant she hated him to death. So he got angry and started saying to himself, "A woman was brought here for one purpose only, and that is to have children. I don't know why I treat her like this. All I have to do is lock her up. And from tomorrow on, I won't let her stand on any land where grass grows." But suddenly, as Seline was about to fall, Paris turned to her quickly and managed to catch her. And here Seline felt embarrassed as she put her hand on his thigh and started saying to herself, "Oh my God, his thigh. It's hard like a giant tree." At the same time, Paris was also shocked and started saying to himself, "Oh my God, her waist. It's so thin. And she's so light she weighs like a rabbit. I must feed her a lot before winter so she fills up. And I must add more furniture to the room, a fireplace and another layer of windows. And I must not let her out." He said this thinking he loved her. And this is because Paris Phileas was a man who lived and died without knowing love. He lived a lonely life, but in the end, he died without realizing he was alone. And as for Seline, in the original story, the imprisoned Seline suffered from Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome means that the person who is being harmed feels sympathy for the person who is harming them. It is said that she slowly fell in love with Paris. But what about Paris? Unfortunately for Paris, Seline was just a woman to have children. This is unfortunate. Then the character who embodied Seline's character said, "But now I think I understand why Seline opened her heart in the original story. When I was about to fall, he suddenly ran towards me with a surprised expression and held me tightly in his arms. At that moment, I touched Paris's massive thigh and chest, and the smell of wood coming from him. That's why she felt embarrassed and said to herself, 'Is his skin made of wood?' I thought it would be hard, but I never expected it to be this hard. Did he spray some perfume before he came to see me? Surely not. In the original story, he was described as a scary monster. But when I met him in person, he was very kind and careful, and his manners were perfect, to be honest. If I keep meeting Paris this way, I think I'll fall in love, won't I? It's definitely not because Paris is the perfect type for me, or because I'm easy." And suddenly Paris gave her his hand and said to her, "If walking is hard enough to make you fall, isn't it better to hold on to me, even if we don't walk at the same speed? Take my hand." And here she stared at him in amazement and then did so, and he took her outside. And here she looked at the meadow and said, "It's really a great place." And she went to see the grass. At this time, Paris looked at her and said to himself, "There is still a lot of time until the weather gets warm, so the view is ugly. What's good about those barren fields and bare branches? She shows up with such a cheerful face." And here, when she looked at him and laughed, his feelings moved, and he felt embarrassed and turned to the other side. He said to himself, "It's worth seeing her like this. Anyway, I don't think she'll look at this again." But she did and said to herself, "Wow, it looks like the real Middle Ages." And here she remembered her past and said, "In the past, when I was in a theater troupe, I used to imagine myself working in Hollywood. But this scene is real now. But if I can't go back to Korea and I have to live locked in my room like the original story, then what's the point of all these sights? And if I can't escape, I wish I could at least capture this person's heart. But how can I, who have never been in love, let alone in a relationship?" And here she gave a sad face, while Paris was looking at her and clenched his fist in anger. He said to himself, "Why are you making such a sad face?" And he went to her and said to himself, "Just a short while ago, she was happy to see the ugly old castle and the abandoned fields, and suddenly he grabbed her arm firmly and looked at her angrily. He said to himself, did she suddenly realize that that monster is her husband? And this indicates his lack of self-confidence, while she was looking at him in amazement, so he couldn't say anything and just said, "It's better to go in now." Then he left quickly. He said to himself, "This is the woman I brought here, so why can't I even yell at her?" But suddenly she stopped him and said, "Excuse me, can you give me your arm, please?" And here Paris was shocked and said to himself, "Oh my God." Then he said in embarrassment to himself, "Yes, there are times when you feel frustrated when you are in a cold place for a long time. In addition, your stamina will run out quickly, so you may collapse from exhaustion on the way." Then here he drew a scene in his imagination where she falls from exhaustion and he carries her and says, "If you are having difficulty, I will carry you." And she looked at him lovingly and said to him, "Thank you, Paris." And here we will go back to reality, and he gives her his arm and says to himself, "At that time, I have to carry her in." A special hug scene. But that didn't happen, and here, he said to himself, she looked like she was going to collapse at any moment. But she's walking well. And here Seline went to the fireplace and said, "Wow, it's warm." I think Anna lit the fireplace, but Paris didn't give her a word, so she felt nervous and said to herself, "Why aren't you saying anything again?" And Paris just looked at her silently, while Seline said to herself, "I want to say something now to lighten the mood." So she turned to him and said, "Wow, the atmosphere is really peaceful." But Paris said in tension to himself, "Peace." And here she said to him, "I really enjoyed myself today. The scenery was beautiful too. Let's go for a walk together like this from time to time." "At this time," Paris said to himself. "She says she's going for another walk and she feels comfortable. Isn't this woman afraid of me? Wait, I was definitely planning to lock her in the room as soon as we got back, but how did it end up like this?" And here she was looking at him in surprise at his silence, while he continued and said, "Yes, it's all because of those eyes. As I look into those eyes, I feel like I'm under that woman's spell, as if he is." And here he took her robe and said to himself, "Let's not forget the main goal." Then he looked at her and said to himself, "All this woman has to do is have a baby. And if so, even today." And suddenly Seline smiled at him, and here he is, stunned as it is. And he said to himself, "She must be tired today, so it's best to start tomorrow." Then he covered her up and said to her, "First of all, you must sleep well today." And Seline, "Yes." And she did that, and the next day when she woke up, she found Anna in the room, and here Anna said to her, "You're already awake, Your Grace the Grand Duchess." And here Seline said to her, "You don't need to greet me like that." And she says to herself, "It's kind of to be treated this way by someone older than me." But Anna said to her, "Everyone will treat you and greet you this way." And here Seline felt embarrassed and was silent for a bit, then said to her, "I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but I grew up as a common girl and I'm not used to etiquette, and I still don't know how to respond in such situations. I hope you can help me." And here Anna looked at her and said to herself, "Of course, as I said. It seems you don't know much, but the tone and presence are not bad. In that case, you might soon be suitable." And here she said to her, "Would you like to have your breakfast first?" And after Seline did that, she said to herself, "I'm full and I feel warm. What should I do now?" And suddenly, in shock, she got up and said to herself, "Come to think of it, no one told me to leave the room." In the original novel, Seline was imprisoned, but Anna did not do that yet. So she took a robe and continued saying, "I need to go out and get some fresh air and the gentle sunlight. People say that one gets depressed when they stay in a closed place for a long time like this." But suddenly she found Anna in front of her, and she said to her, "Where are you going?" And Seline, "Outside, staying inside, makes me feel depressed." And here she noticed that she brought her lunch. And here Anna said to her, "How would you like to have it?" And Seline, "It might be difficult to take it outside." And here Anna said to herself, "Did the Grand Duchess want to go outside? I can prepare it again as an outdoor meal, but instead of going out." And here she said to her, "There is another table at the end of the corridor. Having lunch there might give you the feeling of an outing." And Seline said, "Enjoy." "Really?" Then let's go now. And Anna, I'll get it ready right away. And when Seline went outside and was about to eat, she was saying to herself, but what is the first cutlery that I should use? Outside, if I make a mistake, then Anna will point it out. And here Anna looked at her and said to herself, I haven't decided yet what and how I will teach Her Highness the Grand Duchess. Really, as my master said, and she remembered when Barras said to them, I will bring you a girl. All she has to do is give birth to an heir. And here she said, there is no need to teach her anything if she is only going to live in my inner palace as a woman for the heir. But looking at today and yesterday, this cannot be the case. When I discovered Barras's trick and found animal blood on their bed. And here she said in tension, my lord already knows that I can distinguish between animal blood and human blood. And it means that this animal's blood must have been seen by the maids in the outer castle in order to counter the gossip that will arise due to the lack of consummation of the first night. Did my lord do such a gentle thing? Is this my Grand Duke? Who are we talking about now? Is it possible that my lord has suddenly gone mad? However, it is clear that Her Highness the Grand Duchess had even the slightest effect on the lord's actions. Perhaps only Her Highness the Grand Duchess will be a beacon of hope for the north, which may stop the lord's rampage. And suddenly, Seline called out to her, and she said to her, since I'm going out today, is there anything I should know? And here Anna said in tension to herself, leaving the castle. Are you just planning to go for a walk? And here she said to her, I will follow you. And she is saying to herself at the same time, she can never be alone. And here the scene changes to Barras, and he says to himself, my head. I feel like, as if it is frozen, I need a reason to say it while locking her up. And of course, I tried to lock her up without a reason. But that was also, and here in shock he said, doesn't this look like I'm treating her like an object? I brought her here for one reason. I know I sound like a hypocrite, but I still need a reason. And here he remembers her health and says to himself, I don't want her to act like this. And he went towards the window and said to himself, what on earth is this? And here he looked at them, and he says to himself, what are you two doing now? And when they left, he said, wait a minute. They won't leave the castle, will they? And here in tension he said, why? Are you trying to escape? Since Anna is with her, this will not happen. What if she tried to escape from Anna in a crowded place? And here he went quickly and said I must follow them immediately.